My life shattered on a Tuesday afternoon, not with a bang, not with a whisper, but with the crinkle of a lottery ticket, hidden beneath a pile of old socks in my wife Sarah's dresser. It wasn't just any ticket, it was the ticket. The one for the state jackpot, the one everyone in town had been talking about for weeks, and it was worth $65 million. I wasn't snooping, not really. Sarah had asked me to put away her laundry, something she rarely did, always insisting on doing it herself. I'd been grumbling good-naturedly, tossing her clean clothes into her drawers, when my hand brushed against something stiff and papery at the very bottom of the sock drawer. My first thought was a lost receipt, or maybe an old postcard she'd forgotten about, but then I pulled it out. The bright colors, the bold numbers, the lottery logo. My heart hammered against my ribs. For a split second, pure, unadulterated joy coursed through me. $65 million. Our lives were about to change. No more worrying about bills. No more stretching every paycheck. We could finally buy that house we always dreamed of, travel the world, give our parents a comfortable retirement. Then I saw the date it was bought, and the date of the draw. Both were weeks ago. This wasn't a recent purchase. This ticket had been sitting there, hidden for almost a month. The joy curdled into a cold, hard knot in my stomach. Why was it hidden? Why hadn't she told me? Sarah and I had been together for 10 years, married for 7. We weren't rich, but we weren't struggling either. We had a comfortable, if somewhat predictable, life. We shared everything, or so I thought. Every financial decision, every dream, every worry. We were a team. Except, apparently, when it came to $65 million, my mind reeled. I stood there, the ticket hot in my hand, feeling like I'd been punched in the gut. All the small things started to make sense, or rather, not make sense. Her sudden upbeat mood over the past few weeks, the way she hummed to herself, more often, the casual mentions of what if we had loads of money that I dismissed as idle daydreaming. She wasn't dreaming. She knew, and she hid it from me, her husband, her partner, the man she swore to spend her life with, in sickness and in health, for richer or poorer. And she chose to be richer, without me. The betrayal hit me harder than any punch ever could. It wasn't just about the money, though that was a huge part of it. It was about the deliberate deception, the calculation. Coldness required to hide something so monumental from the person you supposedly loved the most. It felt like she had ripped our entire history to shreds, spit on our vows, and then smiled in my face. A sickening thought formed in my mind. What was she planning? Was she going to leave me after she cashed it? Disappear with the money? Start a new life without me, while I was none the wiser, still struggling, still working my ordinary job, still paying our ordinary bills? The thought sent a jolt of icy fear through me. I imagined her packing a bag, leaving a note, and me finding out months later that she'd moved to some island paradise, living it up on money that was legally half mine. I wouldn't let that happen. My initial instinct was to confront her right then and there, to storm out of the bedroom, ticket in hand, and demand an explanation. To scream, to cry, to watch her squirm. But a colder, more cunning thought pushed its way to the front of my mind. What would that achieve? She'd probably deny it, hide the ticket better, or cash it immediately, and then claim it was always hers, or that she'd lost. She might even try to minimize the amount, or claim she was planning a surprise, though a surprise that involves hiding it for weeks and not telling your husband you've won the biggest lottery in state history felt a little far-fetched. If she was playing a game, I could play one too, and I was going to win. I carefully folded the ticket back up and slipped it exactly where I found it, under the socks, as if I'd never seen it. My hands trembled slightly, but my resolve hardened. I had to act normal. Perfectly, painstakingly normal. Every day, every hour, until she cashed that ticket. And the moment she did, everything would change. I needed to talk to a lawyer. Discreetly. I needed to understand my rights. I needed to make sure that when the time came, I was ready. She thought she was being smart. She thought she was being sneaky. But she had underestimated me. Or maybe she just hadn't considered that I would ever find out. That was her first mistake. My second mistake was ever trusting her completely. And that thought, that painful realization, was far more devastating than the money. The money could be recovered. Trust, once broken, was a lot harder to put back together. As I closed the dresser drawer, leaving the hidden ticket precisely where it lay, I felt a part of my heart snap. It was a clean break, sharp and precise, like a twig underfoot. The man who had walked into that room to put away laundry was gone. In his place stood someone colder, harder, and utterly determined to ensure justice was served, no matter the cost. And I knew deep down that the cost would be everything. Our marriage, our shared future, our very understanding of what love was, all of it. The next few weeks were the longest, most agonizing period of my life. Every morning, I woke up with a dull ache in my chest, a heavy weight pressing down on me. I had to wear a mask, a flawless facade of a loving, unsuspecting husband. Every casual touch, every shared laugh, every evening spent watching television together felt like a performance. And it was an Oscar-worthy performance, if I do say so myself. I observed Sarah trying to decipher her every move. She seemed lighter, happier. She'd hum more, gaze out the window with a distant, dreamy look in her eyes. Sometimes she'd stare at me with a strange expression, a mix of affection and something else I couldn't quite place. Guilt, pity, or maybe just the satisfaction of a secret well kept. I found myself scrutinizing her face, trying to find a flicker of deceit, a tell, but she was good, too good. It was torturous. I'd be sitting across from her at dinner, listening to her talk about her day, nodding, smiling, pretending to care, while inside my mind raced. Did she spend a few extra dollars at the grocery store today? Is that new shirt a hint of future spending? Is she looking at me and thinking about how she's going to leave me holding the bag? Questions swirled constantly, a relentless torrent of doubt and paranoia. My biggest challenge was maintaining our financial routine. Sarah had always been the one to pay the bills, manage the household budget. I'd always trusted her implicitly with it. Now every time she mentioned money, my ears perked up. Oh, the electricity bill was a bit higher this month, she'd say casually. I'd nod, forcing myself not to ask. Higher than what? Higher than the millions you have stashed away? The irony was a bitter pill to swallow. I would even sometimes mention my own small financial concerns, things like needing new tires for the car, just to see her reaction. She'd offer sympathy, sometimes a suggestion, but never a hint of the massive windfall she was sitting on. It was maddening.
The first thing I did, very carefully, was reach out to a lawyer. I couldn't just walk into the first office I saw. I had to be discreet. I pretended to be researching legal options for a friend who was in a complicated situation involving assets and I found a highly recommended family lawyer, Mr. Henderson, through an online search, making sure to use an incognito browser and a burner email address. I scheduled an initial consultation for a day. Sarah was at work, telling her I had a dentist appointment. Mr. Henderson was a shrewd, kind-eyed man in his late 50s. I sat in his office feeling a knot of shame and anger coil in my gut as I finally laid out the truth. I told him everything. Finding the ticket, the date of purchase, the amount, Sarah's. "This is a serious matter, Alex," he said, adjusting his glasses. "Lottery winnings acquired during a marriage are almost universally considered marital property, subject to equitable division. The fact that she hid it from you, and for this length of time, significantly strengthens your case for a favorable division, potentially even more than 50-50. Histories such as to tame to the He explained the process. We couldn't file anything until the ticket was cashed. That was the crucial part. Until the money was real, it was just a piece of paper. It's just a piece of paper. To say it was tours no. He advised me to continue acting normally, to gather any subtle evidence I could, though the ticket itself was strong proof. Funds knew the ticket itself free through me. He drafted the divorce papers, making it clear they were ready to file the moment she made her move. I signed them, feeling a mixture of grim satisfaction and profound sorrow. The hardest part was going home afterward, seeing Sarah, and pretending nothing had happened. She hugged me when I walked through the door. To the door. He's a dentist, she asked. He's my. Fine, I lied. Just a routine checkup. The lie tasted like ash in my mouth. That night, I went to bed next to her, feeling a chasm widen between us. We used to tell each other everything, whisper our dreams in the dark. Now, she was literally lying next to me, sleeping on a secret worth tens of millions of dollars. A secret that would destroy our lives. VC saying secret Zakatodian Zichiniwin to sages Satan. The silence in the bedroom felt deafening, filled with unspoken truths. Every day, I found myself glancing at the dresser, wondering if the ticket was still there. I resisted the urge to check. I had to trust my memory and trust that she hadn't moved it. Felt like living on a ticking time bomb, and I was the only one who knew the countdown had begun. My heart ached for the life we used to have, the naive trust, the simple happiness. But I knew that life was gone, incinerated by a single hidden piece of paper. The weeks stretched into months, and still Sarah hadn't cashed the ticket. My anxiety grew with each passing day, turning into a constant low thrum beneath my skin. I was a coiled spring, wound tighter and tighter, living a lie that felt heavier than lead. Sinking. Sinking. Was she trying to prolong her secret life? Enjoying the feeling of being rich without the public scrutiny? Or perhaps without the immediate need? Kissing notice maiden. Sagacity zub transmitted needed sim to it needed cousin you I said while she hadn't made any extravagant purchases, I noticed subtle shifts. She'd suggest going out to nicer restaurants more often. And if I hesitated over the price, she'd wave her hand dismissively. Oh, just once in a while. It's fine, she'd say, a new confidence in her voice. She bought herself a few new, expensive pieces of clothing, things she would have deliberated over 4 weeks before, poise before. Sein mil to Nobel Minos. In fact, she hardly mentioned money at all, which, for Sarah, was highly unusual. It was as if a great financial weight had been lifted from her shoulders, even though... Did you hear about that big jackpot a few months back? She asked, stirring her tea. Someone in our town won it, say. Sin, ooh, Timmy says, so say time. Was it? Oh my knee, stop. My mind raced. "Oh, really?" I said, trying to sound genuinely surprised. I hadn't heard. "Wow, 65 million? That's insane, lucky person, whoever they are." I watched her face carefully. She just nodded. A faint, almost imperceptible smile playing on her lips. Conversation moved on, but I felt a cold dread settle over me. She was testing me, gauging my reaction, perhaps reveling in her secret. I spent more time in the garage, supposedly working on old projects, but really, I was researching. I looked up the specific lottery, the timeline for claiming the prize, the process. It stated that winners had up to a year to claim their prize, but most claimed it much sooner. My lawyer, Mr. Henderson, confirmed that waiting too long could actually be a disadvantage in court, implying her intent to keep it hidden. My coworker started asking if I was okay, if everything was all right at home. The love I'd once felt for her was slowly being replaced by a gnawing emptiness. Nanas nat is a certain natanito mass nanamtamatum is an apinatum turn in finances certain use certain be sapins deed number
I found myself imagining the future without her, picturing what I would do with my share of the winning. It was a dark fantasy, tinged with a deep sadness, because it meant the end of everything we had built. Then, a new external pressure arrived. My mother needed a costly medical procedure, nothing life-threatening. But it was expensive, and her insurance wouldn't cover everything. I brought it up to Sarah, trying to be sensitive, explaining our options, looking for ways to cover the gap. I even suggested maybe using some of our emergency savings. Sarah listened, her brow furrowed. She seemed genuinely concerned, but there was a strange hesitation in her eyes. I waited, hoping, praying, that this would be the moment. The moment she'd say, "Don't worry, Alex, I have something to tell you," but she didn't. Instead, she offered generic sympathy and suggested we look into payment plans. My heart sank. Even with my own mother's health on the line, she couldn't bring herself to reveal the secret. This was a new low. It wasn't just about hiding money from me. It was about withholding a solution to a real family crisis, all for her own selfish deceit. That night, I heard her on the phone in the living room, talking softly. I couldn't make out all the words, but I heard lottery, appointment, and next week. My breath hitched. This was it. The waiting was almost over. She was finally making a move. I felt a surge of adrenaline, cold and sharp. The ticking bomb was about to explode. I couldn't tell if it was relief or pure terror. Relief that the agonizing suspense would soon be over, or terror at the inevitable explosion that would follow. As I lay in bed later, pretending to sleep, I felt Sarah stir beside me. She rolled over, her back to me. The gap between us felt wider than the ocean, and I knew with a chilling certainty that soon that gap would be permanent. The end was truly in sight, and I was ready, or at least I had to be. The week that followed was a blur of heightened senses and suppressed emotions. Every morning I woke up with a sense of impending doom, mixed with a grim determination. Sarah's subtle changes became more pronounced. She started making more phone calls from her home office, speaking in hushed tones, often closing the door. I overheard snippets: financial advisor, investment options, privacy. Each fragment of conversation was a nail in the coffin of our marriage. She spent more time on her laptop, her screen angled away from me. Once, I saw her looking at luxury travel destinations, dream houses, and high-end cars. She quickly clicked away when I entered the room, offering a casual smile. Just browsing, she'd say, dreaming. But I knew her dreams were very real, and they no longer included me. Not truly. I noticed the small details. The way she handled our mail, quickly sifting through it almost protectively. The way she'd glance at the news, specifically for stories about lottery win. She even started talking about future plans with a new enthusiasm, mentioning things like remodeling the kitchen or taking a big trip next year. It was a cruel twist of the knife, knowing she was building these castles in the air, knowing she intended to tear them down and build new ones, without me in the picture. She'd talk about our future, and I'd just nod, my stomach churning, imagining her true intentions. The ticket was gone from the sock drawer. I knew it the moment I walked into the bedroom. A cold emptiness settled in the pit of my stomach. She had moved. Or, more likely, she had taken it with her, ready to make the final move. My heart, which had been a heavy, throbbing thing for weeks, now felt like a block of ice. I called Mr. Henderson. "She's making her move," I told him, my voice tight. "Ticket's gone. She's talking about financial advisors and future plans." He was calm, professional. "Okay, Alex, this is good. It means we're nearing the end of the waiting game. Are the papers ready?" "Yes," I confirmed. "I signed them weeks ago." "Good. Once you have confirmation she's cashed it, we file immediately. The faster, the better. We want to establish her intent to hide it from the moment she made the money real." He reminded me that this was going to be difficult, emotionally and financially, but that the law was on my side. "She violated the trust of your marriage, and she tried to defraud you. That doesn't look good for her in court." The thought of facing her in court, of our private pain becoming public record, was nauseating. But there was no turning back. She had drawn the battle lines, not me. The night before what I suspected was her big day, Sarah was unusually affectionate. She cooked my favorite meal, put on music we loved, and held my hand at the table. She looked at me with what seemed like genuine warmth, her eyes sparkling. "You know Alex," she said, her voice soft. "I am so lucky to have you. You've always been my rock. I can't imagine my life without you." Each word felt like a lie, a carefully constructed illusion. My throat tightened. How could she say these things, knowing what she was doing? Cueing she was about to cash a lottery ticket worth millions and hide it from me. Was she trying to assuage her guilt, or was she simply that good at deception? Thought that she could look me in the eye, say she loved me, and simultaneously plot to keep me out of a life-changing fortune, was the most heartbreaking realization of all. It wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about the utter destruction of trust, the betrayal of everything we had built. I managed a strained smile. "You too, Sarah," I said, the words catching in my throat. I wanted to scream. I wanted to shake her and demand to know how she could be so cruel. But I held it in. I had to. The plan was too close to fruition. That night, as she slept soundly beside me, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The silence in the room was punctuated only by her soft, even breathing. I felt a profound sense of loss, a sorrow so deep it was almost physical. This wasn't just a divorce. It was the end of a decade of my life, the death of a dream. I was losing not just a wife, but a future I had believed in, a partnership I had cherished, all because of a piece of paper and her calculated deceit. The next morning, Sarah announced she had a really important errand to run. She dressed carefully, put on her best clothes, and even did her hair. She seemed almost giddy. "I'll be back in a few hours," she said, giving me a quick kiss on the cheek. "Don't wait up for lunch." I watched her drive away, her car disappearing down the street. My heart pounded, a drum solo of dread and anticipation. This was it. The moment I had been waiting for, preparing for. The moment the money became real. And the moment our marriage ceased to exist. I took a deep, shuddering breath and reached for my phone, my thumb hovering over Mr. Henderson's number. The battle was about to begin. The hours Sarah was gone stretched into an eternity. I paced the house, my mind a whirlwind of emotions. Anger, hurt, a perverse sense of excitement that the end was near. I tried to distract myself, but every task felt meaningless. I couldn't focus. I kept glancing at the clock, my phone clutched in my hand, ready to call Mr. Henderson the second. I had confirmation. She returned mid-afternoon, and I heard her car pull into the driveway. My breath hitched. This was it, the moment of truth. I forced myself to be in the living room, casually reading a book, as if I hadn't been counting every second of her absence. The moment she walked through the door, I knew. Her face was flushed. Her eyes sparkled with an almost manic joy she couldn't quite contain. There was a lightness to her step, a radiant glow that was impossible to fake. She looked like a woman who had just had every single one of her dreams come true. She was trying to act normal, to play it cool, but her excitement was palpable, radiating off her in waves. "Hey," she said, her voice a little too bright. "Long day?" "Something like that," I replied, my voice steady despite the tremor in my hands. I put my book down, forcing myself to meet her gaze. "Everything go okay with your errand?" She hesitated, her eyes flickering. "Oh yeah, just fine. Took longer than I thought, but it's done." She hugged her purse a little tighter to her chest, a tell I didn't miss. I noticed her hand was shaking slightly. "Good," I said, a faint smile on my face. My heart was a stone in my chest. "Anything interesting happen?" She laughed, a forced tinkling sound. "Not really, just a lot of paperwork. You know how it is. I didn't push it, not yet. I needed absolute confirmation." She went into the kitchen to get a glass of water. I subtly followed, pretending to head for the bathroom. I saw her place her purse on the counter, and in the brief moment she turned to the fridge, I caught a glimpse inside. Tucked beneath her wallet, I saw it. A thick stack of official-looking documents, and unmistakable among them, a form with the unmistakable logo of the State Lottery Commission, clearly marked claim form processed. My stomach churned. It was done. The money was real. As she turned back, she caught my eye. Her smile faltered slightly. "What are you looking at?" she asked, a hint of suspicion in her voice. "Nothing," I said, walking past her to the bathroom, my heart hammering. "Just thought I heard something." I went into the bathroom, closed the door, and leaned against it, taking a deep, ragged breath. The air felt thin. My vision blurred for a moment. All the weeks of living this lie, of swallowing the pain, of preparing for this moment, culminated in this unbearable feeling of emptiness and rage. She had done it. She had actively, deliberately stolen half of our future from me. I pulled out my phone, my fingers fumbling as I dialed Mr. Henderson. "She cashed it," I whispered, the words raw and choked. "I saw the paperwork. It's done." "Understood, Alex," he said, his voice calm and professional. "I'll file the papers immediately. They'll be served within the next few hours. Are you at home?" "Yes," I said, my voice barely audible. "Okay. When she's served, she's going to be shocked. Be prepared for a reaction. Don't engage beyond what's necessary. Let the legal process handle it. And Alex, you did good. You did everything right." I hung up, the phone feeling heavy in my hand. You did everything right. But it felt so wrong. This wasn't how I wanted our marriage to end. I had envisioned a peaceful parting, if it ever came to that, a mutual understanding. Not this. Not this cold, calculated betrayal and counter-betrayal. I walked out of the bathroom, my shoulders squared, my face a mask of resolute calm. Sarah was sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone, a look of serene contentment on her face. She looked up when I entered. "Everything all right?" she asked, her voice light. I walked over to the coffee table. My hands, which had been shaking moments before, were now steady. I reached under the pile of magazines where I had carefully hidden them just this morning. The thick envelope, stark white against the dark wood. I pulled it out. Her eyes widened slightly when she saw it. Her smile vanished, replaced by a flicker of confusion, then alarm. "What's that?" she asked, her voice suddenly small. Placed the envelope on the coffee table directly in front of her. My gaze was steady, unwavering, meeting hers direct. "These, Sarah," I said, my voice low and flat, stripped of all emotion, "are the divorce papers." Her face went pale. The color drained from her cheeks, leaving her ashen. She stared at the envelope, then at me, her eyes wide with disbelief, then dawning horror. The silence in the room stretched, thick and suffocating, punctuated only by the ragged sound of my own breathing. The breaking point had arrived, and it was deafening. Sarah stared at the envelope, then at me, her mouth slightly agape. Color had completely drained from her face, leaving her ghost white. "Divorce papers?" she whispered, the words barely audible. What are you talking about, Alex?" Her voice was a shaky, pathetic sound, completely devoid of the buoyant confidence she'd carried moments before. "You know exactly what I am talking about, Sarah," I said, my voice steady, though my insides were churning. I watched her closely, seeing the panic set in, the frantic scramble for an excuse. "No, I don't. This is crazy. Why would you? We're happy. What is this? Some kind of joke?" She tried to laugh, but it was a dry, rasping sound. She reached for the envelope, her fingers trembling as she picked it up. She tore it open, pulling out the official documents, her eyes scanning the words: petitioner, respondent, dissolution of marriage. "This is real," she said, her voice filled with disbelief. Then her eyes narrowed, and a flicker of anger sparked within them. "Why, Alex? What did I do? What did you do?" I repeated, a cold laugh escaping my lips. It wasn't a laugh of amusement, but of bitter scorn. "You want to know what you did? You won $65 million in the lottery and you hid it from me. For weeks. You planned to keep it all. You were going to leave me, weren't you? Leave me with nothing while you sailed off into the sunset with my share of the money. Her eyes darted away, a clear sign of guilt. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. I found the ticket, Sarah. I continued, pressing on, relishing the look of dawning horror on her face. Hidden in your sock drawer weeks ago. I knew about it the whole time. Every time you hummed, every time you looked at luxury homes, every time you spoke to me about our future, knowing you were planning to cut me out of it. I knew. Her face twisted. The shock gave way to denial, then a furious, desperate anger. That's not fair. I wasn't going to leave you. I was planning a surprise. A big surprise for us. I wanted to make sure everything was in order first. You snooped. You invaded my privacy. A surprise? I scoffed, unable to contain my disgust. A surprise you've been hiding for weeks, even when my own mother needed medical help. A surprise you didn't mention until after I just saw the process claim forms in your purse. Don't insult my intelligence, Sarah. Don't you dare try to twist this into my fault. It was a test, she cried, jumping to her feet, her voice rising. I wanted to see if you really loved me, or just my money. I wanted to see if you'd stick around through financial stress. If you really loved me, you wouldn't be doing this. A test. I almost choked on the word. You wanted to test my love by deliberately defrauding me, by planning to abandon me with nothing. That's not a test, Sarah. That's betrayal. That's a fundamental breach of trust. And you know what the real test was. It was me, living with you, pretending everything was fine, watching you, knowing what you were doing, and still staying silent, waiting for you to do the right thing. And you never did. Tears welled in her eyes, but I knew they were tears of self-pity and anger, not remorse. You are just greedy, she shrieked, pointing a trembling finger at me. You only care about the money. You are just trying to take what's mine. What's yours? I echoed, my voice dangerously low. Sarah, we are married. Anything we acquire during our marriage is ours. It's community property. Half of that money is legally mine. You tried to steal it from me. You tried to erase 10 years of our lives, all the struggles, all the dreams we built together, for your own selfish gain. And now you call me greedy? I felt a cold, hard rage building inside me. A rage so powerful, it almost consumed me. I was going to tell you eventually, she insisted, though her voice lacked conviction. When? After you were already on a private jet to Fiji? After I had filed a missing persons report? When you had already spent it all? I paused, taking a deep, shuddering breath. This isn't about the money, Sarah. Not just about the money. This is about trust. This is about honesty. This is about everything we promised each other. And you shattered it. You broke every single one of those promises the moment you decided to hide that ticket. She sank back onto the couch, the divorce papers scattered around her. Her face was a mess of tears and anger, but beneath it, I saw a flicker of something else, raw, unadulterated fear. The realization that her carefully constructed plan had not only failed, but had backfired spectacularly. I hate you, she whispered, her voice venomous. The feeling is mutual, I said, my voice flat, devoid of any warmth. Our lawyers will be in touch. This marriage is over, Sarah, because you killed. I turned and walked away, leaving her there, amidst the wreckage of her lies. My heart felt like a hollowed-out shell, echoing with the pain of 10 years. now reduced to nothing but a bitter memory. Confrontation, while necessary, had stripped away the last vestiges of hope, the last thread of love. All that was left was the cold, hard reality of betrayal and a future that suddenly felt bleak and uncertain. The finality of my words hung in the air, a devastating pronouncement of an end that was far more heartbreaking than any I could have imagined. The hours immediately following the confrontation were a blur of raw emotion. Sarah locked herself in the bedroom, alternately sobbing and shouting. I stayed in the living room, feeling numb, the silence between her outbursts deafening. Later that evening, she emerged, her face puffy and stained with tears, a packed suitcase in her hand. She didn't say a word, just walked past me, her eyes filled with a searing hatred. The front door slammed shut, and she was gone, just like that. 10 years ended in a slap. The next few days were a strange mixture of relief and emptiness. The mask I had worn for weeks was finally off, but what was left underneath was a profound sense of loss. Our house, once filled with laughter and shared moments, now echoed with silence. A constant reminder of the shattered trust. Then the legal process began in earnest. Mr. Henderson filed the divorce papers, officially notifying Sarah and setting the wheels in motion. Her lawyer, a notoriously aggressive attorney named Miss Davies, immediately sent a scathing reply accusing me of malicious intent, greed, and emotional abuse. It was a clear tactic: discredit me, make me look bad, and deflect from Sarah's actions. The first court appearance was brief but humiliating. Sarah and I sat on opposite sides of the courtroom, not daring to make eye contact. Our lawyers did all the talking. Miss Davies argued that the winnings were Sarah's personal property, obtained before any joint decision was made, and that I was simply trying to exploit her windfall. She tried to portray Sarah as a victim of an opportunist husband. Mr. Henderson, calm and collected, presented our case. He highlighted the timing of the win during the marriage, the deliberate act of hiding the ticket, the weeks of deception, and the fact that I only filed for divorce after she had cashed the ticket, demonstrating that her actions forced my hand. He emphasized the concept of community property and Sarah's breach of fiduciary duty. He even brought up my mother's medical issue, showing Sarah's complete disregard for our shared responsibilities, even in the face of family crisis. The judge, a stern-faced woman, listened intently. She ordered a full disclosure of assets from both sides and set a date for a hearing on the division of property. I could see the doubt in her eyes when Miss Davies tried to argue that Sarah was merely considering her options and that the surprise story was plausible. The judge clearly wasn't buying it. The news, predictably, spread like wildfire through our small town. Lottery winners were always big news, but a lottery winner hiding it from their spouse and then getting divorced over it, that was juicy gossip. People whispered when I walked into the grocery store. Friends called, some offering support, others clearly uncomfortable, trying to stay neutral. Some of Sarah's friends, predictably, took her side, spinning tales of my supposed coldness and her generous intentions. My own family was shocked, but incredibly supportive, rallying around me. It was a painful reminder that our private trauma was now a public spectacle. I felt a strange mix of emotions. On one hand, a sense of vindication. People were starting to see the truth. On the other hand, the sheer exhaustion of it all. Every phone call, every legal document, every whispered comment was a drain. The emotional toll was immense. I found myself replaying every moment of the past few months. Every lie, every faint smile from Sarah. It was like picking at an open wound, making it fester. One night I sat alone in our quiet house, looking at old photos of Sarah and me. Photos of our wedding day, of vacations, of simple moments of shared happiness. We looked so young, so full of hope. And now all of it felt like a sham, tainted by her deceit. Was it always there? This capacity for betrayal, just waiting for the right opportunity? Or did the sheer magnitude of the money corrupt her? I didn't know which thought was more unsettling. The money, the millions of dollars that were legally half mine, suddenly felt meaningless. Couldn't bring back the trust, couldn't heal the pain, couldn't rebuild the life that had been so brutally destroyed. I was fighting for my financial rights, yes, but more than that, I was fighting for validation, for the truth to come out, for her to be held accountable. But the cost was immense. My heart was broken, and no amount of money could fix it. I was winning, in a legal sense, but I was losing everything that mattered. And the legal battle had only just begun. The path ahead was long, and I knew it would be filled with more pain, more accusations, and a deepening sense of emptiness. The legal battle dragged on, a grueling, soul-sapping war of attrition. Sarah, through Miss Davies, fought tooth and nail. She refused to settle, instead opting for every possible delay tactic, every legal maneuver to prolong the process. She argued for smaller divisions, for spousal support, for anything that would diminish my share or drag out the proceedings. It felt like she was trying to punish me for exposing her, for not letting her get away with it. Each month brought new filings, new demands for discovery, more court dates. I spent countless hours with Mr. Henderson, recounting details, poring over documents, and preparing for deposition. The legal fees mounted, though Mr. Henderson was confident that a substantial portion would be covered by Sarah once the divorce was finalized, given her attempts at fraud. But the immediate cost was high, adding financial strain to the emotional burden. I lost some mutual friends during this period. Some explicitly sided with Sarah, believing her surprise story, or convinced I was a mercenary opportunist. Others simply faded away, uncomfortable with the drama, unable to navigate the minefield of our shattered marriage. It was another layer of loss, another piece of my old life chipped away. Holiday gatherings, once filled with warmth and camaraderie, became awkward affairs, and sometimes I simply chose not to go, preferring the solitude of my quiet house. The emotional toll was immense. I was perpetually exhausted, sleep-deprived, and often felt a deep, pervasive sadness. The betrayal gnawed at me. I'd lie awake at night, replaying old memories, trying to pinpoint when Sarah had changed, when the trust had first started to erode. Was it always there, this capacity for deceit, lurking beneath the surface? Or did the allure of so much money simply twist her into someone I no longer recognized? Questions were endless, and the answers were always painful. There were moments, fleeting moments, when I questioned my own actions. Should I have confronted her immediately? Would it have saved our marriage? Would it have been less painful? But then I'd remember the image of her face when I brought up my mother's medical bills, her casual dismissal of my genuine concern, all while sitting on millions. I'd remember the calculated way she hid the ticket, the weeks of living a lie. My path was the only one that preserved my dignity and ensured justice. She had left me no other choice. She made her bed of lies, and now she had to lie in it. The hearth-breaking aspect wasn't just the betrayal itself, but the slow, agonizing process of dismantling a life built on promises. It was the realization that the person you thought you knew, the person you loved, was capable of such profound deception. It was the death of a dream, the shattering of a shared future. I used to imagine us growing old together, laughing, supporting each other. Now, those images were replaced by the cold, sterile reality of courtrooms and legal battles. The judge, growing increasingly impatient with Sarah's delaying tactics, finally scheduled a definitive hearing for the division of assets. Mr. Henderson was confident. The evidence was overwhelming. The hidden ticket, the timing of her claiming it, the lack of prior disclosure, her subsequent attempts to hide the assets or minimize their joint nature. He had a strong case for not just a 50-50 split, but potentially even more in my favor, given her fraudulent conduct. During one of the final court sessions, Sarah looked at me across the court. Her eyes were hard, filled with a mixture of resentment and defeat. There was no remorse, no flicker of the old Sarah I knew, only a deep, abiding bitterness. It struck me then that, even if she had won the legal battle, she would have lost something far more valuable: her integrity, her soul. And I realized that, while I might win the money, I too had lost something irreplaceable. I had lost the belief in unconditional trust, the naive hope that love could truly conquer all. The victory, when it came, would be bittersweet, stained with the sorrow of a lost decade, and the knowledge that some wounds never truly heal. I was nearing the finish line, but the track was littered with the debris of a broken heart. The day the judge delivered her final ruling was surprisingly anticlimactic. After months of grueling legal battles, the courtroom was quiet, almost solemn. Sarah sat, stone-faced, beside Miss Davies, her usual defiance replaced by a grim resignation. I sat on my side, Mr. Henderson beside me, my stomach churning with a mix of anticipation and dread. The judge's voice was clear and firm as she read her decision. She found that the lottery winnings obtained during the course of the marriage were indeed marital property. Furthermore, she highlighted Sarah's deliberate concealment of the ticket and her attempts to defraud me, citing her willful and malicious intent. Because of this, she didn't just rule for an equitable 50-50 split. Instead, she awarded me a larger share of the winnings, citing Sarah's egregious breach of trust and duty. It wasn't the entire amount, but it was significantly more than half, covering my legal fees and providing a substantial settlement. A wave of relief washed over me, so potent it almost buckled my knees. It was over. The fight was finally irrevocably over. But the relief was instantly followed by a profound emptiness. There was no joy, no triumph, just a hollow ache where my heart used to be. Sarah's reaction was exactly what I expected. She recoiled as if slapped, her face contorting in a mixture of fury and shock. Miss Davies quickly leaned in, whispering to her, but Sarah just shook her head, tears streaming down her face. She glared at me, her eyes blazing with an unholy resentment, a hatred so pure it sent a shiver down my spine. It was the last I ever truly saw the woman I married. After the proceedings, Mr. Henderson shook my hand. "Congratulations, Alex, we won. You got what you deserved." "Thank you," I murmured, my voice raspy, "for everything." I walked out of the courthouse into the bright sunlight, feeling strangely detached. The world seemed to move on around me, people going about their lives, oblivious to the monumental shift that had just occurred in mine. I was now a very wealthy man, at least on paper. But what had it cost me? My marriage, my trust, my peace of mind. The money felt tainted, burdened by the weight of betrayal and heartbreak. It was a victory, but it felt like a defeat. I received the first transfer of funds a few weeks later. The number in my bank account was staggering, more money than I had ever dreamed of. But looking at it on the screen, there was no thrill, no excitement. It was just a number, a constant, unwelcome reminder of the price I had paid. My divorce from Sarah was finalized a month later. We didn't see each other again. All communication went through our lawyer. She had signed the papers, undoubtedly still seething, but legally bound by the judge's ruling. Our decade together ended not with a whimper, but with a series of angry legal documents. I started to plan my new life. What would I do with the money? Invest it, of course. Maybe buy that small house I always liked. Help my family. Travel, perhaps, to places Sarah and I had always talked about. But now, the thought of going alone felt like another twist of the night. The dreams we had shared, the future we had built, all lay shattered around me. I realized then that this money, while providing financial security, could never truly heal the wound that Sarah had inflicted. Couldn't restore my faith in love, couldn't erase the memory of her betrayal. I was free, yes, and financially secure. But I was also profoundly, irrevocably broken. The victory felt hollow, a heavy weight in my heart. I had won the battle, but lost the war for my own emotional well-being. And as I looked out at the world, a future stretched out before me, empty and vast, filled with more money than I could ever spend, but devoid of the one thing I truly yearned for. The simple, quiet trust of a shared life. The end of my marriage wasn't just a legal formality. It was the end of a fundamental part of myself. Time has a strange way of passing. Days bleed into weeks, weeks into months, and suddenly, a year has gone by since the divorce was finalized. My life is different now, irrevocably altered by the discovery of that lottery ticket. I used the money wisely, as Mr. Henderson advised. I invested it, diversified my portfolio, and set up a trust. I bought a new, smaller house on the other side of town, a quiet place with a big garden. It felt cleaner, untainted by the ghosts of what used to be. I paid off my parents' mortgage and set up a fund for their retirement, ensuring they would never have to worry about money again. That brought me a small measure of peace. I still work, though not because I have to. My job provides a routine, a sense of purpose beyond just managing money. I've started volunteering at a local animal shelter, spending my weekends helping abandoned pets find homes. It's a small thing, but it fills a part of the emptiness. The financial security is undeniable. I don't worry about bills anymore, or unexpected expenses. That gnawing stress is gone. But it hasn't brought me joy, not truly. It's a quiet comfort, a background hum of stability, but it can't replace what I lost. The heartbreaking pain is no longer a sharp, acute agony. It's dulled, softened by time, but it's still there. A phantom limb ache, a permanent scar on my heart. I am a different person now, warier, more cautious. The naive, trusting man who married Sarah is gone. In his place is someone who understands the darker side of human nature, the corrosive power of greed and the fragility of trust. I occasionally hear whispers about Sarah. She reportedly struggled after the divorce, losing a significant portion of her remaining winnings through bad investments and expensive habits. The friends who sided with her eventually drifted away. I hear she's working again, struggling to rebuild her life. Dad, here is no satisfaction in hearing that, no sense of triumph. Just a quiet acknowledgement of the tragic path she chose. She got her money, and it destroyed her too, just in a different way. I tried dating a few times. It was awkward, sometimes painful. How do you explain your past? How do you trust again after such a profound betrayal? I find myself scrutinizing people, looking for tells for hidden agendas. It's not fair to them, and I know it. So for now, I've decided to focus on myself, on healing, on learning to live with the scar. I still have moments of profound sadness, especially when I see old couples holding hands, or hear a song that reminds me of simpler times with Sarah. The loss of the shared future, the dreams we built together, still aches. We had planned so much, and all of it, every single part, was swept away by a single hidden lottery ticket. The money, the immense fortune, ultimately brought me freedom from financial worry. But it came at the highest price. Destroyed my marriage, shattered my trust, and left me with a broken heart. I won the legal battle. I secured my half of the winnings. But the real victory felt like a hollow. 'Cause no amount of money, no matter how vast, can ever truly compensate for the loss of genuine love and unwavering trust. My hearth may be financially secure, but the warmth of a shared life is gone, perhaps forever. I survived. I moved on. But I will never forget the day my wife hid her lottery winnings, and the day my world came crashing down.